The content of this podcast is for informational purposes only and is not a substitution for professional medical or mental health advice, diagnosis, or treatment. If you're struggling, please seek help from a licensed mental health professional. If you are in a crisis or think you may be in danger, please contact emergency services or a crisis line in your area. Please take care of yourself while listening.
So hey, check. We always do check. Can you give me a
Checking
check,
one,
check,
two.
check?
Here I am checking my
How
microphone.
come 3 and 4 never get mentioned?
I don't know.
Isn't that
3, 4.
Yeah.
3 and 4. I guess 1, 2 is enough.
right? If you got a good
Binary.
audio guy, it's 1, 2.
That's all you need. Yeah. 5, 6.
Welcome back to the Northern Echoes podcast here at the Awesome Music Project inaugural golf tournament. It's a great vibe to be here. I can't tell you how good of a vibe to be here. I'd like to welcome Rob Carli, co-founder, board member of the Awesome Music Project.
Thank you,
to
Mark.
the Northern Echoes
Thank you
podcast.
for coming out. Thanks for agreeing to make the weather perfect. It's pretty excellent.
That's my producer who does that.
Yeah, it's
Frank
a good
did
day. I
that.
mean, whenever you plan an event that's outdoors, you're obviously rolling the dice a little bit. And this time of year, it could be like a day like today, but you're not guaranteed it.
It's the first
and
day of the year.
It's really the first. It's gonna, whatever it's gonna be, 22 or 23 degrees, and it's not humid. It's just a really perfect day for golf. The perfect day to talk about music and mental health.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So for those who just turning in, I'm going to go through Rob's quick little bio here. The word salad, as
right.
often referred to. Music just isn't a career. It's a lifelong passion for Rob. A celebrated composer and performer, Rob has spent decades creating music that moves people, earning multiple Gemini and Canadian Screen Awards along the way. He's best known for composing the score for 15 seasons of Murdoch Mysteries. And he regularly performs with top ensembles like the Toronto Symphony Orchestra and the National Arts Centre Orchestra. He also shares his love of music as a saxophone instructor at the U of T. But beyond the notes on a page, Rob has always been fascinated by the science of music, how rhythm, melody, and harmony can shape emotions, heal the mind, and improve well-being. His deep passion for both music and mental health led him to co-found the Awesome Music Project, where he explores how music can be a powerful tool for connecting and healing. Whether composing, performing, or sharing his passion for the science of music, Rob is driven by a simple but powerful belief. Music has the power to change lives. Welcome to Northern Echoes, my brother.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
This whole thing resonates pretty deeply with me in regards to, I've been a lifelong music fan, and as I've said before, music has always been a good friend to me.
Yeah.
When did you decide that this was kind of like, how did it find you?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I always wrote music as a child and played instruments. I studied it, but wasn't enamored with the idea of practicing like most kids, and didn't really see, it didn't really connect any dots as to how I might make that sort of a lifelong pursuit. But by the time I was in high school, I had become fascinated by film composers and the marriage of film music with images and pictures. And and I was also playing a lot, and sort of gravitated toward more writing and more sort of looking at, what does that look like as a career? How do you become a film and TV composer? And then began to, take some necessary steps. There's so many different pathways to achieve that goal. There actually is now no prescripted way to do that. But for me at the time, it seemed like getting, some higher education in music was the way to go. So I did that and studied composition. And then, like so many, you kind of work in the trenches as an apprentice or as an assistant. which I did for years and years. But by the time I was probably early 20s, it had crystallized for me this idea that I could really just pursue this wholeheartedly, with distractions along the way of other kinds of jobs and doing other kinds of work, but never really at that point deviating too far from that focus.
And so it would obviously progress. Now, the one of the beneficiaries is the Peel Children's Aid Society, and their music programs. So you joined a music program at a young. Were you told you had to do it, or was that something you did by yourself?
I didn't have to do it. In fact, it was. I mean, at the time, I think I was in maybe grade 6 or grade 7, and they had the itinerant music come around, and I think everybody had to at least maybe take 4 to 6 weeks of instruction once a week. But then those who wanted to pursue it could put their hand up, and I did on the clarinet, which I wasn't very good at. But then rather quickly I migrated to the saxophone, which I did find pretty comfortable, and I kept playing it. So that was a long time ago, but I sort of found it to be not too difficult an instrument for me to play at the time. And I was also studying piano, and I was not very good at that. But on piano, you have two staves to read. You have to read 2 hands.
Yeah.
And on saxophone, it's just one. I was like, oh, this is much easier to read this music and easier to execute. And so I kept playing the piano, but that's kind of when the opportunity.
Your backup plan. Everybody is a backup plan.
But I mean, all the way from that moment, grade 7 onward, I recognized, and when you're in a music program, whether it be an itinerant program, or I actually didn't do a lot of music at the high school. I did it more at the regional level. There was different ensembles and things, but it doesn't really matter. My point is however you're exposed to it, you're also exposed to a community of like-minded musicians. Really, it's a bit like going to camp, like a sports camp or a golf camp or any kind of camp where
it's a secondary community
you kind
family.
of find, and to me that was like a real eye opener, and you realized early on that you have this community, and I think it's an essential part of really being a human is trying to find those communities. And so often now in our lives, because the world has gotten so much smaller, the idea of globalization and things, where you have sort of communities that used to be just small tribal kind of dozens of people, maybe 150 people, they say,
within a certain geographical area.
And then now, of course, you can have friends across the globe, and we can almost be overwhelmed. And that's why there's almost a lack of sensitivity sometimes to the way people treat other people. It's like, I don't know that person. That person's part of a whole other community. So when we find those little essences of community, wherever they might be, whether it's through your interests or, for some people it's congregation in religion, or it's a bowling league, or whatever it is, sports, music, whatever can bring you together in a community of like-minded people can sometimes really be really great for your soul and ultimately
it's fertile land
I think
to grow in.
It's not to sound like a cliche, but I mean, when you get off your phone and suddenly you just experience people, we all kind of instinctively know that, but when we can exercise that, we can feel better.
Yeah, it's. I think it comes down to, you were speaking about the global community. It becomes a little diluted, right? Yeah. So your friendships become diluted. Well, I know that guy. I'm a friend with that guy, but I've never met him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Whereas when we grew up as younger people, we had this little geographical community of about 5 kilometers. Well, first it would start at a kilometer, right?
Yeah,
then it would branch out
bigger, but yeah, exactly.
Right? And then maybe one day it was like, oh, I'm going to take the subway to Warden, and I'm really going to expand my community. Yeah, but we've lost that.
Totally. It's funny. You made me think of something. Remember in grade school, or maybe in high school, there was a thing called a pen pal, where you would write to somebody in a foreign country.
That was huge.
It was a huge deal, and it was this exchange of ideas from a different culture and a different nation, and it's something that it's no longer necessary in some ways, because people have email and Facebook and social media to communicate with people all over the world. But there's a certain measure of intimacy lost when it becomes easy to do something.
Yeah, we've lost that the smaller commune type of, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So if you can discover those ways of finding those things, I think it actually is really good for you.
Human connection.
Yeah, precisely.
Music and human connection.
Yeah, I think
how
music
important
for me
is it?
Well, for me, of all the things I just described, I was talking about sports and bowling. I guess that's a sport. And different interest groups and whatever affiliations that you might have. For me, music is the one that is so ancient and almost tribal and almost essential, because if you look at what it is, really, if you look at rhythm and dance, it's fundamentally just the most basic thing, and we can all understand it instinctively. We all can dance. Even if we're not a good dancer, you can still move to music. You can still sing happy birthday or whatever song it is, even if you're not a musical person by your own estimation. I still think we intrinsically have latent musical abilities as humans, and it's rediscovering those things and being able to find that connection through music. I think can be an epiphany for some people, and it can be just a lifesaver for others.
Absolutely. So, when you think about it, a baby moves. By the time they get up on their fours, maybe rock. They can rock, right? You play music for them. You can see them automatically communicate with that music, that beat, that rhythm communicates with that infant.
Yeah.
Right? And that is just like, that's just a boom, wow, aha moment, right?
Totally. Absolutely.
And what we're doing, we're expanding upon it now by introducing science. There's got to be a science to this, right?
Well, for sure. That's kind of the impetus of the Awesome Music Project, was really to try to help validate the use of music as a I don't want to say prescribe. Well, you could say prescribe, but a way to really treat things like anxiety and depression and just various kind of mental health challenges that we have. And how do we use music? Well, we kind of instinctively know, again, like I said, how we do that. But through the science, you can help to validate those claims and then bolster just the universal adaptation of that, either through medical practice or through funding or through programs in schools or programs in institutions across the country. And those things, you do need the science. Otherwise it becomes, like I said, we all instinctively know it works. But by having the science there, it just helps to validate it more and to just underscore the importance of it.
A recognized form of therapy.
Yeah, precisely. That's
right?
exactly. That was the audacious goal of one of the initial audacious goals of the Awesome Music Project, was to how do we get it so doctors can prescribe music to treat anxiety and depression. That was kind of one of the boxes we wanted to check.
I actually had a doctor prescribe me.
Well, there you go. They call that social prescribing, and it's something that's, different countries do it at different rates. I'd like to think that we're still trying to pursue that in Canada. We may be a little behind other countries. In fact, I know we are. But that's part of the game of catching up, and part of the education we're trying to do, and the awareness and the advocacy that the Awesome Music Project is doing.
Well, it's important too as well, because it's a good dependency to have, right? So if I'm prescribed a prescription to help me with my mood, maybe I want to try something a little more holistic before I get to that point, right? You know what I mean? So
that's another point. The other question was, what are the alternatives to pharmaceutical treatment of these conditions? And this was not to be an indictment of the pharmaceutical industry at all, but it's just, let's just look at what are the other possibilities. And that was important part of our initial kind of pursuit, was to, what can we do? How can we use music? How can we, like I said, how can we validate it further? And how can it become universal in its acceptance as a valid method for addressing mental health issues?
Sure, it's a treatment. So, I was speaking earlier about my son is 17, and he just got out. I'm hoping he's on the other side of that adolescence. They used to see pink and blue when they're growing up. Everything's pink, everything's blue, everything's bubble gum, unicorns, wow.
Yeah.
But when you get to a certain age, it becomes a little more of a class society, and a little, what I mean? There's a little more judgmental, there's anxiety that starts. Things aren't pink and blue anymore, right?
No, of course not. The end of the innocence, of course, yeah.
And this is when that, I don't know if there's any data behind it, where people usually gravitate towards music and go, okay, I need to pick up, I want to pick up an instrument. And that's why it's introduced maybe at that age.
Maybe. I never even thought of it that way. I never thought that there was that kind of formulaic approach, but maybe you're right. I mean, I do know that, young children, while many of them, have capacity and get instruction, it's often difficult at a certain, like 4, 5, and 6, you can give them instruction, and some kids are brilliant and pick it up right away, but a lot of kids aren't ready yet. And I think as you get a little older, your brain's wiring a little differently, and you can start to become more adept, I guess is the word. So that's just a fact of growing up and becoming more skilled
and then you find as you become, if you get attuned to music, and they start to dance and they start to form their identity of who they are going to become later in life, and music a lot of times is part of that.
Yeah, for sure.
Right along
Absolutely.
the way, and then to your point, it gravitates to a community where you would go to music school, you would join a band. So this introducing the music to the youth as a way of coping with 5 to 10 times the stress that I had when I was at the same age 50 years ago, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, things have changed, right? There's a lot more stressors.
I think so. There's a lot more, like you say, judgmental behaviors partly because of social media. I don't want to blame social media, but we all can recognize how it does expose kids to a lot of feelings they might otherwise be protected from. Mm-hmm. And it can be a lot more difficult to navigate that as a adolescent. So we know that. I mean, there are so many overwhelming pressures. And if you look at the data, kids now are facing a much bigger mental health crisis than they were 2 generations ago. Yeah.
Absolutely.
For sure.
And that's a man-made crisis too. That's a societal crisis.
I think it's something.
I'm not like,
it wasn't intentional, but it's a byproduct of our own behaviors and our own technology, and just the way in which we're marketing toward kids, the way in which not to say we personally, but we as a society, how we prioritize what we're feeding our kids, literally and figuratively, I think is really important to their own development.
Yeah, and it's very important to hold on to that through their journey through life too.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
getting those skills when you're young, for sure.
A lot of times when it's something you let go of.
Yeah.
In life, right? It's like, you know what I mean? So you get, you were lucky enough and gifted enough and blessed enough to carry music with you.
Yeah.
Through your whole
right place
life.
at the right time,
Yeah.
I'm lucky that way for sure. I was
serendipity.
I know I was very fortunate to be able to have music and to let it be something that was able to guide me, and I really count my blessings frequently. I pinch myself and go, not only do I have music in my life as my profession, but it's kind of what I dreamed about doing when I was younger, and so to be able to live that dream is a real privilege, and I feel very fortunate.
Yeah, some of us, I held on to music for all my life. Like I never played or anything like that, so somebody's got to listen.
Yeah.
Right? Somebody's got to love it. I consider myself a music lover.
Yeah.
Right? If you play it, I'll listen to it. If I hear live music on the street 3 blocks away, I'll find it where it's coming from. But a lot of people, and sometimes in my life when I went through my echelon of life, I let music kind of go, not on purpose. Just life happens. You have kids, you have career, music is not as important to you anymore.
For sure.
So it's important to recognize we need to carry that through.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? Let's not put that book down, right? Let's keep that going, right?
Let's keep it going.
And that way you can take it into to your senior years, where, again, you're going to use that music as a crutch, again, for cognitive function.
It's a lifelong skill, being able to use it. That's part of the thing we try to do with some of our programming, is that we try to give people like a toolkit of, it's not just about, here's a playlist. It's more about how can you interact with music? How can you engage with it and use it, as, I don't want to say a crutch, but it is kind of like that. It's a crutch or a
it's
tool.
a life aid.
It's a tool.
It's a life aid.
It's something that can help you, or not. If sometimes you don't need it, but it's always good to have those skills. How to recognize what it can do to you. For sure.
So we'll keep on this journey.
For sure,
right?
It's a long journey. It's we're not done yet, but I'm just grateful that we have people like yourself, Mark, who are just so enthusiastic about it and recognize the power of music and are passionate like we are, and then it's just engaging those passions and firing everybody up.
Yeah.
And, breaking into dance.
Yeah, no, it's something to be celebrated.
Totally.
Right?
Totally.
Music is to be celebrated. That's what it's used for.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It can bring you all kinds of places when you want it to be there. It's multi-purposed.
Totally.
Right? It can help you through those tough times. It can get you fired up if you need a friend to talk to.
Yeah.
It's there to listen,
things,
or
absolutely.
there's a song about what you're going through in life right now. There is a song about that,
Yep.
right?
It's true.
It identifies with you individually, one-on-one, right? But if you play it in front of a group of 20,000 people, it does the same thing to those 20,000 people, and now you're part of a community,
Totally.
right?
Absolutely.
So I'm mopping up what you're spilling, my friend.
Awesome. Thank you, Mark. Thank you.
Keep being awesome.
Thank you very much.
And thanks for having us.
Awesome.
And, we
This has
want to
been
take
great.
this show on the road, my friend, and you're coming with us.
I love it. I love all what you're doing, and I really appreciate you capturing all of this and your dedication to this.
Yeah, it's a
And,
movement, my friend.
It's a movement.
It's
and
a
Thank you
movement.
for jumping
Yeah.
on the train with us.
Oh, yeah. Happy to
Awesome.
be here. Awesome,
Great,
buddy.
man.